We're going to be looking deeply at how we leverage blockchain evidence to tackle cybercrime, terrorist financing, and financial scams. So first up, we're going to hear from Will Lyne, who is the head of cyber intelligence at the NCA, and Phil Larratt, who is our director of investigation solutions at Chainalysis.
Morning everybody. My name is Phil Larratt. I'm the Director of Investigations for the international team at Chainalysis. And first of all, I just want to start by saying a huge thank you to Will and the NCA for agreeing to present today and discuss this very important topic. So just a bit about my background. So prior to joining Chainalysis around 2 years ago, I actually worked alongside Will at the National Crime Agency. So Will, I'm going to hand over to you. It'd be great if you could give an intro both to your role and also the work that the NCA and the National Cybercrime Unit is doing in relation to cybercrime and sanctions.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, everyone. So I'm Will Lyne. I'm the head of cyber intelligence at the National Crime Agency. So that's within the National Cybercrime Unit. So that's the cyber part of the National Crime Agency. And we do exactly what it says there. We lead, support and coordinate the response to serious organised cybercrime within the UK. Work really closely with what we call Team Cyber UK partners, so with policing, 43 police forces and the regional organised crime network in the UK. I think there's colleagues from the Metropolitan Police in the room alongside HMRC and other partners, and really work really closely with international partners. So one of my previous roles before I came back to the UK was as the cyber liaison to FBI over in Washington, DC. And then work really closely with academia and industry partners such as Chainalysis. So we're about 250 to 300 people, and we have 4 main business areas within the National Cybercrime Unit. So we have operations, so that's teams that look very much like your traditional detective type teams. Intelligence, which is my part of the business. Incident management, which does exactly as it says on the tin. We have a responsibility to victims of serious organised cybercrime in the UK, predominantly ransomware at the moment. And then we have our own technology capability and functions where we design bespoke tools and have bespoke capabilities for us within cyber.
Okay, thanks, Will. So, specifically in relation to ransomware, I know that when we first started working together many years ago, we were dealing with sort of variants such as DMA locker and crypto locker, but the threat has very much sort of evolved since then. So it'd just be good to get sort of a readout from you really, just in terms of the specifics. Yeah,
so it's really interesting. So ransomware has gone from a really niche cybercrime problem back in kind of like, when I first started working in cyber in 2012, 2013, modern ransomware didn't exist as it does now. And it's really quickly become a national security threat, not just in the UK, but around the world. And so I think it's really interesting to think about why that is and how that's come about. So for me, ransomware is a symptom of something that we call the cybercriminal ecosystem or the marketplace. And you can think of that as a place where you can go and you can get products, goods and services. So products is something that's been refined for sales. So malware is a really good example of a product that you can buy within the ecosystem. Goods are things like credentials or illicit commodities that you can go and purchase. So, for example, username and password is a good that you can purchase within that ecosystem, often within a forum or a particular bespoke marketplace. And then services, which are exactly what they say on the tin. So infrastructure as a service, malware as a service, coding as a service, bulletproof hosting, anything like that is all available within that ecosystem. And then when you combine that with virtual currencies, which not just provide a way for you to be able to make those transactions within that ecosystem to go and buy the products, goods, services that you might want, but they're also a really great way to launder funds. So you can really quickly and easily and relatively risk-free move significant value between jurisdictions with relative ease in a way that you just couldn't do before. So for me, it's when Bitcoin first became mainstream and came onto the scene, it only took a couple of years for what we describe as the first modern ransomware variants to come onto the scene. And so what does all that mean for us? It's meant that it's lowered the barrier of entry to get into cybercrime, particularly ransomware. So you no longer need to be technically proficient. You no longer need to be a Russian speaker. You no longer need to have the kind of like kudos or credentials or people vouching you into particular forums or marketplaces. And we've seen really sophisticated tools and capabilities have proliferated across that ecosystem. So when you and I were first working on cybercrime many years ago, the best tool that you could probably buy online would be like a DDoS tool to kick your mate's website or something like that offline. Pretty low equity, really easy to mitigate, pretty inexpensive. Now you can really quickly buy incredibly powerful cyber tools and capabilities within the ecosystem and it's frighteningly easy to do so. So that lowering of the barrier of entry, proliferation of tools, it's led to ransomware as a service, which has meant that ransomware has really exploded. And that's how it's gone from this kind of niche problem that nobody really cared about all those years ago to a national security issue in such a short period of time.
Yeah, thanks, Will. If we just focus on sort of the last 2 to 3 years, I remember when I was working alongside you in the National Cybercrime Unit, we had numerous sort of Ryuk ransomware attacks that we were dealing with. It felt like at some points almost sort of a weekly basis. And we see that threat evolve. So specifically looking at Ryuk and Conti and TrickBot and that particular nexus. Just 2 questions for you, really. I think the first, how's the UK specifically responded to this threat, and how, as an agency, have you sought to disrupt it, really?
Yeah, really challenging. So TrickBot, Conti, Ryuk Group, roughly speaking, all the same individuals. In the UK, well over 100 organisations have been the victim of just Conti alone. But they're a real challenge to deliver outcomes against. So they're generally all Russian-based, and they don't travel. So traditional law enforcement, kind of like criminal justice, the bread and butter of what we in policing do, go and arrest people, take them through a trial process and put them in prison, it kind of doesn't work. So you have to think about it as in, what I like to think about it is we have to try to impose cost and risk on them. And change their decision-making processes, those decision-making calculus that they go through, and their behaviour. And we should aim to change the behaviour of three different groups of people. So firstly, there's the adversary, there's the threat actors themselves, the ransomware operators that are conducting ransomware attacks not just against the UK but against people all over the world. There's the harbour state there. Mentioned already, the vast majority of these ransomware organised crime groups are Russian. So how do you influence the Russian state? How do you potentially influence the relationships that they might have with the Russian state? And it's particularly pertinent when we talk about the Conti group, because obviously when the Conti chats were leaked, obviously that revealed in open source a connection to the FSB, which is one of the Russian intelligence services. And then how do you also influence victim behaviour is the last category there. So I always think it's really interesting for someone that's dealt with serious organised crime for many years that there is still some really irresponsible victim behaviour, particularly in the ransomware space. So if you're the victim of virtually any other serious crime in the UK, if you paid off the perpetrator and hushed it up and hoped to get away with it, everyone would see that as enormously irresponsible behaviour. But in actually ransomware and in other cyber type threats, actually that's kind of become an acceptable practice. So how do you influence that victim behaviour? So really difficult. So you have to look at imposing cost and risk, alternative disruptions and doing things a little bit differently.
Okay, and specifically in relation to the activity that the NCA has taken with international partners and domestic partners across HMG, if you could go into a little bit more detail specifically in relation to the designations of the 7 Russian individuals.
Yeah, so this is one of the tools that we've decided that we wanted to use against ransomware organised crime groups. So we've designated 7 people from the TrickBot Conti Ryuk gang. And actually some of the reflections and some of what we've seen have been really positive in terms of what the impact of that has delivered in terms of getting at those 3 objectives that I spoke about before. So the adversary behaviour, the harbour state behaviour, the victim behaviour. It is one of a package of bits of activity that we're utilising to associate cost and risk. But this is a really carefully thought through piece of activity. The individuals have been carefully chosen, and the way that designations have been designed and then put out there have also been really carefully chosen. So we're very cognizant of the fact that obviously in lots of ransomware attacks, paying can be the least harm option. So there's some public guidance that goes with the UK sanctions, that if anybody encounters sanctions issues around any sort of ransomware incidents, I would absolutely point you to that public guidance, which is a really good document in terms of understanding mechanisms and ways by which you can pay and things like that. So yeah, a lot of work goes into identifying these individuals. Obviously, they have been put out there. Their names and their monikers are there as well. We know that cyber criminals value their anonymity. And I think our message to them is that we know who you are, and we know what you've done, and we'll never give up. And this has all been orchestrated really closely with our US partners, so Treasury, OFAC over in the States, alongside colleagues from the FBI.
And I'm right in saying that these 7 individuals and the designations that were ultimately issued, there were no crypto identifiers in those, were there?
No, so we just designate the designations. Effectively, the information that we publicly released was just the names and then the online monikers of the group, which most of them are largely already well known in open source anyway, as a result of the Conti leaks. So lots of work has been done by really great people across the industry on identifying a range of people from the Conti network anyhow.
Okay, thanks, Will. So I think more on that. So we didn't have any crypto identifiers in relation to any of these 7 individuals. So as a company, we want to take this back on chain. So in terms of the kind of step-by-step process, so we as a company want to empower our customers from the private sector to identify risk on their platform. And to do that, we need to identify any wallets that are associated to these 7 threat actors that have been designated by the NCA and international partners. From a law enforcement and public sector perspective, their objectives are going to be somewhat different. They want to develop intelligence, they want to secure and preserve evidence, and if possible, seize assets. And the point I'm making here is the foundation of all these investigations and all this risk management is a robust data platform. And our global intelligence team work tirelessly just to ensure that the data that we subsequently build our software products and our services on is reliable. So Will previously mentioned the TrickBot Conti leaks. If we just quickly look at a timeline, so Russia illegally invaded the Ukraine on the 24th of February last year. A day later, the Conti group came out in support of the Russian government. And then 2 days after that, we saw a security researcher release 60,000 lines of archived Jabber chats in relation to this crime group. So as a company, we take that intelligence, we collect it, we analyze it, we translate it, we pull out all the crypto identifiers, and we ensure that any of the labeling within our software is accurate and reliable. And that forms the basis of many different investigations in relation to the threat posed by ransomware, but the threat also posed by these individual threat actors. Now, fast forward a year, the NCA and partners then designate some of these individuals. And 5 out of the 7 hackers designated by the NCA, we had crypto addresses attributed to these individuals. So there were 700 addresses that were then subsequently labeled. So if we look at this in terms of what it looks like in Reactor, on the left-hand side, we can see that these different ransomware strains making payments into the TrickBot group administrator. And on the right-hand side, we can see that the group administrator for TrickBot is actually making direct payments to 4 out of the 7 designated actors. Now, looking beyond Conti, Ryuk, TrickBot, we've seen numerous other successes based on the transparency of the blockchain and empowering investigators to disrupt this activity. So on the left-hand side, you can see from Chainalysis Reactor the investigation in relation to dark-side ransomware, in which US authorities actually seized some of the proceeds of crime from the ransom payment. And on the right-hand side, I'm not going to go into this in any detail because there's a breakout session later led by the Dutch National Police, but we can see Dept ransomware and some innovative tactics there deployed to obtain some of the decryption keys, ensuring that sort of victim focus so they could decrypt their data and get back up and running. Now, if we just look at the data, so in 2022, we actually saw a significant decrease in the number of payments to ransomware groups. So in 2021, it was around $760 million, and in 2020, it's around $450 million. Now, I will caveat this, that, from retroactive reporting, that's probably going to go up a little bit over the next 12 months, but it does, in my opinion, show significant progress. So I think to finish, Will, it'd be good to get your thoughts, really. I think first, have you seen sort of a decrease in incidents? And second, can we attribute this reduction in payments to this sort of holistic, whole system approach to the threat?
Yeah, really good question. So I think there is a lot of debate out there in the community about what is happening with ransomware trends. Is it kind of going up? Is it on its way down as the kind of data suggests that less people are paying, or is it kind of level? No one actually definitively really knows. What are some of the drivers? What are some of the causes around this? Is it activity that law enforcement are taking, after the Colonial Pipeline instance and other high-profile instance in 2021? Obviously, law enforcement have relentlessly focused, working across the community on targeting ransomware groups. Is it better resilience? Is it more victims are just not paying? Or is it something the threat actors themselves have done? I think that we definitely have seen a change in targeting, so going for lower profile entities. I think some ransomware groups have recognise that going after high-profile entities paints a target on your back. So yeah, really difficult to say. I would say that financial loss isn't a good indicator. Often, particularly with ransomware, it doesn't equate into harm. So we're really interested in reducing harm, and so financial loss massively isn't particularly good. But no, I think we've seen them go for lower profile entities. I think we've seen a shift away from the West, and so we probably are seeing it less. Companies and law enforcement bodies that generally track it. My feeling is that it's generally level. I think that the groups are continuing to make significant amounts of money. I think some of it that we just don't see. I think some of it is a lot lower profile, kind of like in the small to medium-sized enterprises or businesses type space. But no, really difficult to definitively understand what's going on with it. I would say that in 2023 we have seen an uptick. Mm-hmm. So I think that there was a bit of a lull in 2022 as the fallout from the war in Ukraine changed some victim decision-making calculus, it changed some of the harbour state behaviour, definitely changed some of the threat actor behaviour. These are almost all exclusively young military-age males in Russia, and kind of they have a war to fight. So yeah, I think we have seen an uptick in 2023, and it's going to be really interesting to see if that trend continues.
Okay.
If anyone has any ideas, come let me know.
Okay. Will, just want to say thank you very much. Thanks for your fantastic insight, and appreciate it.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Very important topic, and there is a breakout session this afternoon that digs into Dept in more detail. So if you're interested in learning more about ransomware and specifically that variant, please join that session. Next up, we're going to dive more deeply into terrorist financing and how we are leveraging blockchain analytics to combat that. So on the stage, you'll be hearing from Amit Levin, formerly a cyber unit prosecutor with the Israel Ministry of Justice, and Craig Gillespie, who is a manager of investigations here at Chainalysis.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be sat here with Amit and
thank you, Craig.
Kind of discuss this clearly important topic. Just very briefly in terms of myself, I work obviously within the investigation special programs team with Erin and Phil. Prior to that, spent 15 years in law enforcement, working as Will mentioned within that Team Cyber UK network within fighting and combating cyber criminality. Wore many hats during that time, and one of the areas we saw in Wales, little old Wales, was some use of cryptocurrency as a means of facilitating terrorism, and it's going to be the topic we'll talk about. So I'll just allow Amit to introduce himself in a little bit more detail.
So I'm Amit. I'm a former prosecutor from the Israeli cyber unit. It's very weird to me to say former prosecutor because I left from work only 2 weeks ago. I used to handle most of the cryptocurrency cases in Israel, money laundering cases and terror financing cases. The last week I am handling literally my kids' laundry without any money. So this is what I did. In Israel, we have a lot of terror financing cases, and it's very, very interesting. In every case, we are learning a new thing that the terrorists work through VASP or through private wallet. So this is what I did for the last 3 years. Our main challenge in Israel, and I think it's internationally, it's to how to convince the judge that what we can see over the blockchain or over the reactor and other tools, this is what happened in the real life. Because I can give an example from one of my last cases. I had a guy that someone stole a USDT from him, and the judge said there's nothing like stable coin. It's not, there's nothing like this, like USDT. And for an hour, we should open all the sources that you can find on the internet and explain to the judge that most of the time he's 65, 70 years old. This is my main challenge for the prosecution point of view.
Thank you, Amit. So today we're going to focus a little bit around how we've seen terror financing evolve and how we've seen the use of the blockchain as an enabler for that. The example we've got here is a publicly available message that's posted with a Bitcoin address and an opportunity for sympathizers to use that as a donation means. Relating here to AQB, but what did you see from your unit in terms of how that evolution took place?
I'm familiar with this address, I have to say. So in Israel, we are looking at terrorist or a criminal like a businessman. When a businessman need to invest his money on stocks or crypto or whatever you like, the criminal is acting in the same. So you need to look about his alternative. Let's look about a terror financing alternative. The first alternative is cash. There is a lot of disadvantage over cash. You need to fly from Israel, let's say, to someplace in the war and transfer cash physically. Someone can rob him. Sometimes you need to use a middleman. The middleman can rob him. Someone can rob the middleman. Someone can catch him on the border and take all his money. So cash, it's not a good option. The other alternative is wire transfer. There is a lot of problem with wire transfer from criminal point of view. I mean, if you transfer money from Israel outside or to Israel, the bank can catch you. The bank can fill a report to the FIU, the Israeli FIU or other FIUs all over the world. So what the ATF built for the last 3 decades from criminal point of view in the crypto world is heaven, because I can do whatever I like to transfer money from point A to point B. No one will know that I move money. No one will know that I have a wallet. So from criminal point of view, it's like heaven. And this campaign, it's like in heaven for terror financing from their point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. However, spending time with you, I know you won't settle for that, and this isn't going to be heaven for them. So talk to me a little bit more about what the blockchain allows us to see and how we can use that to investigate and unravel.
Okay, what you can see on this slide, like every other slide from the reactor on other tools, this is pattern. I have pattern. I can go to the judge or maybe to go to the Minister of Defense, that I will talk about it later, and I can show him, look, he takes the money from this point, from this to there. Our main problem in international investigation, let's take an example, a guy that is doing money laundering cases all over Europe. You know how frustrating it is to get information from Austria, Belgium, other countries. It takes months. The Israel turn with an MLA. MLA is a mutual legal assistant. We turn to other country. It takes so much time. Then we will get the information, and we have a lot of questions about the information, and it takes years and years and years, and the suspect run away, or I don't know, change his name, and you can't find him. On the crypto world, you can see the pattern. It's so easy, because it's transparency for everyone. So when I have pattern, I can find leads to turn to. I can turn to VASPs. I can turn to company. I have to say a few tips that I learned from a crypto investigation. Okay? My first tips, in the traditional ecosystem, money ecosystem, we turn to an Israeli bank, we get a subpoena, and we get an Excel sheets with all the withdrawal and deposit of the money. So easy. The guy get money from HSBC and transfer it to Deutsche Bank. So easy. This is it. But in the crypto world, in Israel, every day we are checking all the addresses again and again and again. Because in the first time, you see, okay, it's private wallet. But after the second time or the third time, we realize it's not a private wallet, it's VASP. And we should turn to Gemini, for an example, or Coinbase, for example. So crypto investigation are, some of them similar to the traditional investigation, but some of them you need to always think outside of the box to find some new tools. Okay? I can give another tip. In a lot of the panels, we talk about private-public partnership. Okay? I think that in this world, if you will give information, you will get information. If you will give to the company, like Chainalysis, information about IP, about email addresses, about cell phones, you will get an amazing information. It's the same with the VASP. We have, in Israel, we work with some of the Israeli VASP and some international VASP, Binance, for example. As much as you give information, you will get a better information about the clients. Let's take an example. If a guy open an account in Binance with the same email, so he has 5 accounts, but if you won't give the email to Binance representative, you not get information about the other 4 accounts. You get information only for the first account, but maybe he deposit all the money on the third account. So as much as you give information, you will get better information in the crypto world.
I agree. I think crucial to success in this type of investigation, but any investigation, certainly where we're involved in large-scale threat actors, organized crime groups, the public-private relationship and kind of building those trust relationships is absolutely imperative. So just kind of taking it back to the blockchain for a second, as we started when we looked at this investigation, our starting point is an address. And using our data, we're able to use that as a pivot point to analyze and understand exactly what is happening from an event perspective. What we see in front of us is that analysis, and we can work backwards to understand actually who has made donations into AQB in this instance. So we can provide that analysis, which provides an opportunity to identify through centralized exchanges to understand actually who's making those donations. But also, there's the opportunity to dismantle and disrupt moving forward. And through insights we can infer from and discover from blockchain, we can identify the administrator behind this, who's in control, who's part of kind of the actual network here, and also seizure opportunities. And I think that's crucial, hitting criminals in the wallet. So what I'd like to just focus on is a little bit around the process and how you went about that seizure process. We've looked at the blockchain. That's one element of the investigation, but how did you take that forward beyond that?
The blockchain is at the beginning of the procedure. According to the Israel counterterrorism law, we turn to our Minister of Defense, the Israeli Minister of Defense. We provide them some intelligence information and some evidence from the blockchain and from the reactors. And then we can prove that the money flow from specific wallet to a terrorist wallet. And then he's signed on a seizure order. You can find on the NBCTF site, you can Google it. It's very simple. There is a version in Hebrew, Arabic, and English. Very simple. And then the prosecutor, it used to be me, literally ran to the court. Because this is what I did. With other shoes, not with this one. Okay. So we literally ran to the court because there is a session yesterday when the chief of the IRS talked about the volatility of the crypto. As a country, we are afraid that the suspect will sue us because of the volatility. If we seize 20 bitcoins that worth million shekels, and after a year they're worth 500,000 shekels, he can sue us because we lost 500,000 shekels. So I turned to the court and asked for court order to exchange the cryptocurrencies to shekels, because we prefer, as a country, me as a private prefer to hold crypto than shekels, but as a country, we prefer to hold shekels more than crypto, and we ask him to convert the money, to convert the cryptocurrency to shekels. But there is a very difficult challenge over here. Because according to the Israeli law, here just Roger came in, I just want to talk about taxes. Okay, according to Israeli law, when you convert cryptocurrencies to shekel, this is tax event. And the suspect, we force him to convert his cryptocurrency, and now we force him to pay taxes for it. And he said, welcome to my world. I don't want to do anything of this. So this is very challenging. And after we get the court order, we have a forfeiture unit, specific forfeiture unit in our Ministry of Justice, that they turn to Israeli exchanges, and they convert the cryptocurrencies to shekels. In the last seizure order, we seized more than 400 kinds of cryptocurrencies. It's not just Bitcoin and Ether. It's easy. It's like SHIB, Dogecoin, some Pepe. I don't remember all the shitcoins, the new shitcoins. So it's very challenging procedure.
So brings us towards the end of our session around the outcome. Ultimately, on the 27th of April, we saw this announcement and we saw ultimately these efforts you've described come into fruition and saw real, clear and obvious disruption of this. So I just wanted to get your final thoughts on this.
Okay, I don't know to read Arabic, but I'm assuming that this is the same in English. I think that this is my swan song of my public career, because 3 days before I retired from the public sector, the Hamas announced that he stopped his donation campaign via Bitcoin. And from my point of view, it's amazing, because we start this presentation with heaven for criminals, with heaven for terror financing. And I think that the world of blockchain, it's heaven for law enforcement. You can see whatever you like on the blockchain. You can learn so much about the money flow. And I think that the Hamas understood that they need to find another way to terror financing. We work on this for 2 years, and this is a major achievement from my point of view.
No, I completely agree, and I think, as you say, it speaks to the benefits. We've kind of heard this echoed through a number of different talks throughout today and yesterday, but the importance of the transparency of the blockchain and using Chainalysis data, we're able to make sense of that, and we're able to draw these clear and effective insights from that. And I also think it sends a message to, as you say, the perception of this being a safe haven, perception that illicit activity is welcome within the blockchain. It sends a clear and obvious message that that isn't the case, and you're going to be caught, or you are going to be affected.
Find another ways.
Yeah. Just to finish from myself, I think one of the key things within our team within investigations and special programs is this concept of blockchain evidence. Criminal justice outcomes to investigations are imperative. We can kind of produce and conduct investigations to a stage, but there has to be an outcome. There has to be an effective. We've heard around using different tools like sanctions for that purpose. It's one of the main bits of my day job to be working with various investigation teams around taking investigations and extracting blockchain evidence out of that. We've done this on a number of cases, some of the high profiles, Gapteba, botnet, Bitcoin mining investigations, ICO, a number of ongoing cases that will soon make their way to court, I'm sure. But it's clear for us we're here to support and work with our partners in government to help them achieve that. So thank you very much, Amit.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you both. We spend a lot of time these days on my team talking about how important the successful prosecution is. And we're seeing more and more these days where cases are going to court. We are having to testify, our partners are having to testify, and all of the analytics in the world isn't successful unless you have a prosecutor who knows how to prosecute the evidence and convince the 65, 70-year-old judge what is happening on the blockchain. So we're happy to have offline conversations about this. It's something that is very topical amongst our team now. People on my team are spending a lot of time in all parts of the world now taking a stand and testifying to this type of evidence. So Amit referenced the public-private partnership and how important that is. It's a really unique opportunity within the crypto space that the community is a really strong community, and we do have really strong partnerships across BASP, across private sector, across the public sector, and we are going to be diving into financial scams and how we are working to prevent that. So next up on stage is Nils Andersen Röed, who's the Deputy Head of Financial Crime Compliance at Binance, and Jarno Laatikainen, who is our Head of Crypto Incident Response.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Nils, for sharing the stage with me today. Let's start by brief introductions on what we have been doing before. So at the moment, I'm working with a team that is working with the biggest hacks in the world, but we are also seeing lots of investment frauds and scams that we are trying to help with our customers. Prior for me joining to Chainalysis 2 years ago, I was working 15 years with law enforcement, and the last 2 years we were working together with Nils in the dark web team in Europol. Myself, I started investigating crypto investigations around 2013-12. When we didn't have any tools. We are only doing clustering through Excel spreadsheets and these kind of things. So we can see the industry has changed tremendously. So yeah, and now we are seeing the next iterations of the industry. Nils, maybe you can give a couple of words of your...
Yeah, I mean, you already mentioned the darknet team. My background is also in law enforcement, obviously, Dutch National Police. There's actually a nice timeline over there with some of my cases as well, and the cases that Jarno worked on. I switched to Binance in 2021, and I'm now the Deputy Head of Financial Crimes Compliance, basically meaning that I'm, together with Tigran Kamberi, who's also in the room, responsible for the investigations team, the SAR team, and a couple of other financial crime related teams. And yeah, the reason for being here is obviously to discuss scams and how to prevent them, how to investigate them as well. It's one of the problems next to terrorism financing that we've seen, which is top of mind as well.
Exactly. And the reason why we are here today is that the scams as a type of criminality, they are the biggest form of criminality in the whole blockchain. Last year alone, $5.9 billion were lost because of these scams. Top 10 type of these scams were investment scams, but also there is things called big butchering, which basically means that the scammer first gets the trust of the victim and then steals the funds. So this is touching the whole industry, all the levels, not just the biggest industry players or the smallest one, everyone. So that's why it's really important to talk about this. And let's start by me asking Nils, what is Binance doing for tackling this specific criminality?
Yeah, I added a couple of different things on this slide about the types of things that we're doing. Obviously, it's very important to understand what kind of scams there are, how the scam networks actually operate, and how to identify them as well. I mean, some of these scam networks are already identified in tools like, for example, Chainalysis and other blockchain investigations tools as well. But scammers, they continuously create new addresses, they continuously try to deploy new kind of things. So it's very important to sort of understand the types of networks and how these can properly identify and what kind of measures you can take to prevent these scammers from continuing their crimes. Predictive modeling, if we identify a particular type of scam scheme, we're sort of trying to see how it works. Also, if we identify victims that were fallen victim to the particular types of scam, then we can look in our own database to see if we have other possible victims that sent money to the same scam scheme, and sort of build from there, like what else happened on that account. Did they receive money from other accounts as well, other types of clusters as well, and sort of then follow the whole pattern and try to track the whole network. And I already mentioned scammers, they continuously try to evolve their clusters to make it more difficult for blockchain intelligence tools to track them. So we're also trying to see, to identify what kind of addresses scam networks and scam groups will generate later on as well. Later on, I'll touch a little bit on the public-private sector cooperation and intelligence sharing as well. But obviously, our major task is tracing the funds, tracing where the money is actually going to, probably the criminals, but also trying to see where, for example, gas fees are coming from. So the transaction fees that have to be paid on, for example, Ethereum type blockchains. The other things that we're doing, and we have an investigations team which is made up of former law enforcement agents, is look internally for other types of linked accounts. If you identify one account that might be linked to a scammer, then we can look at it with some proprietary technology to see there's other types of linked accounts that might also be operated by the same type of scam group. It's sort of similar to what Amit mentioned earlier with the terrorism financing related networks as well. And then we can look at the behavior, at the types of patterns and devices that they're using as well. And prevention measures, obviously a very important thing as well. If you can prevent people falling victim to scams, then we can also take down the networks eventually.
Yeah, and next, let's dive into what kind of investigations we are seeing, and more specifically, like my question would be also, how sophisticated are these scammers if you compare it to other criminalities? Is it something like they go straight forward to exchanges, or is there some kind of obfuscation methods in between?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, the first example is one criminal group that seems to be operating multiple types of scam sites, which seems to be quite straightforward. So this is a website from one particular investment fund, which is linked to a particular types of group, which seem to operate multiple different websites as well. So if you look at the graph on the right-hand side, you see that multiple different clusters, all kinds of scam clusters, they all send money to the same scammer wallet. And from there, it's quite a straightforward link to different types of exchanges. So in this case, we're seeing that the tracing is quite straightforward, but the more difficult part of it is just try to keep track of the different websites that the scammers are actually creating. Because what they usually do is, if law enforcement takes down this website, or after a certain amount of time the website isn't generating enough money, they will just sell the domain names, and that's on the next slide, I believe. They just sell the domain names to make a little bit more money, and in the meantime they already created new types of scam websites as well, and scam investment scams as well. So if you identified a couple of these schemes, it's quite easy to sort of track the rest of the money down. However, what we're currently seeing, and I brought another example from that as well, is that it's a lot more complicated. On the right-hand side, the yellow dots are a couple of exchanges, and you can see deposit from those exchanges into different types of scam wallets as well. Those are the first line in the middle. And from there, you can actually see that all those different types of clusters, some of them with attribution, some without attribution, they are all sort of linked together. And then later on, you see it converging into other types of scam clusters, and that sort of goes on and on and on. It's very difficult to work with these kind of graphs, so that's where blockchain analysis comes in. And on the next slide is like a simplified version of the same graph, where you can actually see the different types of deposits merging into like an initial merge wallet, and then it gets collected into a couple of other wallets which receive funds from these scam schemes, but also from other scam schemes as well. Sometimes you see the funds flow to other exchanges. I left them out here in the graph. But later on, you see it merging to a couple of other clusters. And in the end, it goes, or at least a large part of these funds, will go to 3 deposit addresses at the same exchange. And we are trying to sort of map these fund flows, but at the same time, we're also trying to reach out to law enforcement to try to work together to take down these schemes. On the one hand, to try to take down the network, because that's how we actually did our work when we're still with law enforcement as well, trying to map out the network and take down the criminal infrastructure. because then you can actually prevent these things. But we can also look back about what kind of other types of victims we have on our platform. We can filter on certain type of countries and see, okay, we have so many Dutch victims. Let's work with Dutch law enforcement to see how they were approached by the scammers, and then sort of go from there as well. The other thing that we're doing, this was like tracking the fund flow, sort of looking where it's going. I already mentioned gas fees. If you look at Ethereum-based blockchains, you need to have gas in the native coin in order to pay for the transaction fees. Here's sort of like a sample of how a transaction like that happens. Initially, you see a deposit from about 1,566 USDT into a scam cluster. The scammer received that money, but he cannot directly move the funds away because he needs to transfer gas to the addresses as well. He does it a little bit later, and soon after, the actual scam funds will move to another wallet. So you can trace that deposit, the funds flow, to see where it's actually going to, but you can also go back to find out where the actual Ethereum to pay for the gas fee is coming from. So then you can sort of trace both ways. And this is another tactic that we're deploying together with the seeing where the money is going to sort of identify the different types of networks and the different types of key players within these networks to map out the actual origin of the scam funds. Because how these networks are usually structured is that sometimes a victim gets some kind of money back from the investment scam, but usually that's coming from another victim. So if you sort of look at the gas fees, then you can have a direct connection to the actual owner of the and operator of the scam fund as well. And it sort of looks like, I think something in the next slide, a colleague of mine sort of called it like the top of the pyramid. So we're trying to sort of go to the top of the criminal infrastructure, to identify the different types of patterns. There's some clusters that are probably linked to the actual money laundering part of it. Some clusters are probably linked to, for example, paying for the criminal infrastructure, the websites, the other types of things. Then there's some mule accounts in there as well, and there's a lot of victims which are sort of collected as well. So overall, it is quite complicated. So far, we haven't seen any use of mixing services or those kind of things. Probably also because that's risky, and it's not really necessary right now, because it's already difficult enough to map these networks.
Exactly. Yeah.
And another thing that's very important, I mean, education, prevention, awareness. That's why these days are also very good as well. We need to prevent these users from falling victim from scams. We are trying our best on Binance. We have different types of know your scam campaigns. So if you look at the website, you can actually find all kinds of information about different types of scams. We have warning messages on our websites where if our risk rules detect some kind of risky behavior, warning pop-ups will trigger. So this is a phishing scam alert pop-up, but we also have risk questionnaires where people actually have to sort of confirm and also walk through a list of questions to make sure that they weren't approached by anyone on the phone to install some kind of TeamViewer type software, or that they are aware that if they send money to another address outside of the exchange, that there's no way to get it back because the ownership changes completely. So we're also trying those kind of things. The problem with scams is that people really believe that it's a real investment and that everything can be trusted, and it's very hard to sort of convince them to otherwise. And it's not just the crypto space that's dealing with the problem. In the traditional financial sector, we have the same kind of issues, but it's a very difficult way to deal with that as well. Another thing that we're trying to do, and that's the cooperation with the Hong Kong police force that we did recently. We actually have a static pop-up on our website for our customers from Hong Kong. Basically explaining them certain types of things about the scams together with the questionnaires. And in the first 4 weeks of this campaign, so 20% of the customers actually reviewing their withdrawals from the website, which was a pretty effective thing as well. And another thing, I already mentioned, it's very important to work together with private sector companies, with public sector companies as well, because there's a lot of information that's on both sides. And if you sort of combine it, then you can actually map out these networks. If you don't do that, then you open the space for the crypto recovery companies I listed here. If you search for it in Google, you see over 24 million results. Some of them are good. Some of them are sort of double victimizing the victims as well. Because the problem is with many of these companies, they charge very high recovery fees. And they also want to have some kind of percentage of the the funds if they actually retrieve them as well. So usually you have to pay up front and then later on as well. And they approach cryptocurrency companies with reports from sometimes questionable quality. And this is an example from a report from which used another types of tracing tool, which basically traced through an exchange, then another time through the same exchange, then they follow along sort of peel chain, and then they trace through Binance, and then they end up the hot wallets at Binance as well. And if they send these reports to us, on the one hand, the tracing is completely wrong, so there's no way that we can actually do something with it. On the other hand, if they don't involve law enforcement, these kind of things, then there's also only so much an exchange can do. We can keep the funds frozen for a little while, but after that, if customer complains, then we don't have any real basis to keep the funds unless law enforcement intends to seize it. So that's why it's so important to work together with with public sector companies, but also if law enforcement has information about scam clusters, to share that with blockchain intelligence companies, because that will flow back to exchanges, it will flow back to transaction monitoring tools, and that sort of strengthens the whole exchange, and it actually strengthens the security of the crypto sector.
Totally agree. And I think the combination of quality tools in the right hands, talking with law enforcement and industry, this is the key to tackle all the criminality, not just scams, but all the criminality in the blockchains. So with these words, I would like to thank you. It was super interesting, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you.